Hi, I'm Brent Hull. This is Building with History. You know, it's said they don't build them like they used to. Is that true? Did the master builders and craftsmen of the past have access to secrets that we should know? Well, yes and no. There were certainly things they knew, but they aren't necessarily secrets. A careful study of pattern and trade books of the past reveals a treasure trove of information that we can use for building today. In today's segment, we're going to talk about moldings, how they're supposed to be used in houses, but often aren't. If you're looking for moldings today, it's hard to know what you're going to find. On one hand, there are starter homes with very few moldings. On the other hand, you have McMansions with too many. Sometimes, even with the right amount of moldings, there's still something wrong. How come? Let's find out. To start, let's define what is right. How do you make a great room? What is the essence of a great space? We've all been in them, those rooms that make us feel right. Well, there are many things: furniture, color, lighting. However, one of the more subtle yet vital items is moldings. How come? What are moldings supposed to do? What's their purpose? The first thing is to define the key architectural elements, the windows and the doors. Second is to introduce proper scale and proportion. Now, don't get afraid, those aren't crazy words. We'll get into those. This is a columned entry, not a structural element. It's made up of moldings. However, what is it doing? First, it's defining the architectural elements, this time an opening into a hall. And it's introducing scale and proportion in the room, making it beautiful and charming. In other words, we understand it. It makes us feel right. So how does it work? Well, in Building with History segments on columns, we talked about how classic design influences historic building design. Well, it's no different in rooms. Every molding we use today is based on historic and classic design. This graph shows a column and an entablature. Notice how these same elements define the placement and use of moldings in our homes today. The chair rail is at the same place at the top of the pedestal. The crown molding matches the cornice. Plinth blocks, wainscot, picture molds, all have their origin in classic design. Let's look at an example. This is an historic room that highlights exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, these elements are easy to see right here. Here's the pedestal, the column, and the entablature is plain as day, right there on the wall, defined by moldings. In this next room, the elements are less obvious, but the same rules of design apply. Here's the pedestal, here's the cornice above, and the wall in between is where the column goes. This spacing follows the rules of classical proportion, thus making the room feel right. Okay, historically moldings were used to define rooms and create pleasing proportions and details. What do we do today? What can we learn from this history? First, less is more. Don't get trapped into thinking that more moldings means better design. Often, too many moldings cloud the purpose of defining the room. Remember, moldings are a means to an end. They're used to create a great space. They're not the end. More moldings don't make a better room. 2. Simplify for better results. A few simple moldings with few bold shapes can often look better than more moldings with many shapes. Here are two crowns. First is a modern crown with many shapes and details. Next is a simple crown with picture mold below. The newer crown actually confuses the room because it's so hard to read. Remember, crowns are usually 8 to 10 feet in the air. Try and read what this molding is doing from 8 feet away. You can't. On the right, this simple cove molding works to lift up the room. It's a simple shape, thus it's easy to read and in turn helps us read and understand the room. Finally, size matters. One of the sad facts of today's building is that moldings have shrunk and shriveled. Look at this comparison of moldings. The large molding is a casing from the 1760s, 6 inches wide, 3 inches tall. 3 inches projecting from the wall. It's a big molding. The second molding is from the early 1800s. It's 5 inches wide, 2 inches tall. Now compare that to the 1950s clamshell molding. The problem is that moldings are supposed to introduce scale and proportion. It's kind of hard for molding to do that when you can't see it. The rule here is to go with larger moldings. The general rule is that bases should be 5 to 6 inches tall, casings at least 4 inches wide, and all moldings should be at least 3/4 of an inch thick. It's the best way to get deep shadow lines and clear details. Okay, that's today's segment. Remember, there's a ton to learn from history. You just have to know where to look. I'm Brent Hull. Follow these rules and you'll be building with history.